Today we're going to talk about a different aspect of leadership, which has to do more with the holistic gestalt of who you are and how you can be the best version of yourself. So I contend that if you want to be a great leader or a great contributor to society, then you need to have the best brain possible. Now, notice I didn't say intellect. Supposedly there are 9 different types of intellect, and I do mean the broadest, perhaps, sense of intellect. So I don't want it pigeonholed into any one type. It is everything that you express as being you, which can be your social emotional intelligence, musical capability, spatial ability, ability to think through problems analytically. All those types of intellect. So your brain and your body are quite literally what you eat, drink, and absorb through your environment. Anything that enters your body in whatever way has to be processed by your body, and it creates the cells that are in your body. We end up having a lot of autoimmune diseases today because some of what we take in has toxins or convert to toxins in our body. Well, I won't go into overall the health ramifications because I really want to focus on how you think. If you want to have an amazing brain, one where you give great advice to your kids, learn how to do your job competently, have the most fruitful arguments with your partner, whatever it is, then you need to figure out how to feed your brain with nutrients. So not just food products, but nutrient-dense particles that will come into your body and feed it and create strong, healthy cells, because that optimizes who you are in every possible way. So did you know that dementia and Alzheimer's disease are starting to be called type 3 diabetes? You can read the research. I've linked a little bit to some below and decide for yourself, but it's beginning to be accepted that a lifetime of high insulin, whether it's from processed foods, too much sugar, or some are saying even too much fruit, because that's a form of sugar, harms our brains. Similarly, the connection between poor food choices is connected with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and PTSD. And this is becoming so well known in certain communities that top-tier medical schools are finally beginning to train their psychiatry students on nutrition as a treatment modality for psychiatric issues. And not to keep yammering about this, but multiple types of cancers feed off glucose, which is sugar. So a very low carbohydrate diet can help cancer treatments work better in some cases, like breast cancer. So with all of that, I think you can deduce that to be the most effective professional you can be and lead your best life, the way you eat matters. And if I were to summarize and simplify the books I've read and the articles I've read, and I did put one book below that is very good on its research, but also easy to read. I'd say there are 4 things. The first is to eat real food. A real food is something where you recognize the ingredients readily. In fact, one ingredient would be best. So an example would be beef is made up of beef, right? Lettuce is made up of lettuce. It's pretty simple. And of course, you can stack these foods. So say you wanted to have a hamburger type thing, you could get a burger made just of beef, not usually one from the grocery store because they've added in bread and preservatives and other things like that, but just get ground beef. And you could add lettuce to it, tomato to it, mustard to it perhaps, because that only has 3 ingredients usually. It's just mustard seed, vinegar, and salt usually, unless you get a highly processed one from the store. So those are pretty simple hacks. You could see that you kind of have a hamburger. Do you have the big juicy hamburger with the bun? No, but does that bun make such a difference if it means that your brain could work differently, that your anxiety could go down, that you could perhaps decrease your risk of some other health problems? So a hamburger bun is not considered real food, as an example, because it's made up of many ingredients. The first would be highly processed flour. There would also be some probably highly processed sugar in it. I don't really bake. I don't know what all is in a hamburger bun. Ketchup also has lots and lots of ingredients and is very high in sugar. So those would be examples of things not to put on a typical real food burger. The second thing to avoid would be sugar as much as you possibly can. It's everywhere, as I just described with the ketchup, and you want to avoid these as much as possible, and they include things like we were talking about breads, pastas, desserts. And like I said before, it is possible, and I don't know, that fruit should be eaten in small quantities because it may be just a little too much for your cells in terms of its fructose levels, concentration. The next one is one that I don't think has been talked about as much, and that is to avoid vegetable oils. The oils used in most restaurants are nearly all processed foods are developed by companies, or were back in the 1950s, that needed to do something with their byproducts, their leftovers from crops. It really started with the cereal industry in a lot of ways. Like, what were they going to do with all this extra they had from making cornflakes and stuff like that? So they ended up with cotton seed oil. You've seen cotton. You can imagine that there's not a very easy way to get oil out of cotton. Corn would be similar. That's a very difficult one. So these are highly, highly processed oils. And in the process of making oils out of seeds, it's so brutal that it mutates the seed cells and releases free radicals, which are toxic. So switch to things that actually make oil. If I eat an olive, it very clearly is has an oil substance to it. So olive oil, coconut oil, things like that would be your best bet. And get away from canola oil and anything called vegetable oil, because you could actually watch YouTube videos on the process of making canola oil, for example. It's quite fascinating. And my last one is, from what I've read, is to try to eat during an 8-hour period each day. That leaves 16 hours each day where you're having only water, maybe coffee or unflavored tea, where your body would go without living with insulin coursing through you. So it gets to regulate the insulin and thus not build up insulin in your cells, which is what leads to a lot of these other issues. And it could be, from what I've read, a help in fighting cancer and other diseases, but also improving your mood. So that is it. It's 4 tips. We'll put them up again at the end. And the sad thing for me is that I love fried foods. I love chocolatey desserts. However, after a few years now of avoiding them, almost always, let's say 90% of the time, I can say that I get, I get anxiety flare-ups way less often than I ever did before. Also, a few hours after eating sugar, I can get a real slump in my mood. So it's like a depressive episode. And also, if I drink too much wine, more than 2 glasses of wine at my size, I'm not very tall, 2 glasses of wine at my size, and I basically have to make this choice. Do I want another glass of wine? And I'll feel anxiety later and wake up feeling depressed, or do I just want to stop drinking wine? It's always a choice. It is always a choice. But I think that if you want to be the best version of yourself, you might want to consider how you fuel your brain. And so, like I said, instead of research articles below, I am linking to people I trust who've read all the research and I think have made it really digestible, pardon the pun, for you. So I hope you enjoyed this. We're looking to feed your brain so you can be the most awesome version of yourself. Take care.